Hello there. Happy heresies and welcome to the desert of the real. Yes, this might be a little surprising, and I thought I'd try something different, trying to expand the ways I can reach people. What did Philip K. Dick say? I bring Gnostic gnosis in trashy form. Well, so do I, to an extent, probably not as good as the great Dick, but trying to reach or test different channels as I expand, or again, just try to get out. And so here I am, and you might call this my new vlog. We'll see how it works out. I hope to bring different insights that I might not have talked about in the show or in articles or in any of the books. Some niche stuff, and again, just trying to spread that trashy, that Gnostic gnosis in trashy form in a different channel. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about tonight, and yes, it is the weekend here in northern Illinois, near a town called Wakanda, and also near a town called Woodstock, where they filmed Groundhog Day. So even if I've moved out of Chicago, that high weirdness continues to follow me. So the topic tonight is actually Fight Club. And yes, I am breaking the first rule. I am talking about Fight Club, and I'm also beating an old joke, a dead horse with that joke. But anyway, I wanted to talk about Fight Club because recently I finally read the sequel to Fight Club. And this is right here. That's Chuck Palahniuk's sequel to Fight Club. Yes, again, I am late to the club, but I finally read it, and it actually gave me some very new insights on the idea of Fight Club. Fight Club is one of my favorite movies. I saw it in 1999 in a very strange time when I was out of rehab and I was sort of picking up the pieces of my broken life. And one of my pastimes was going to movies at night because I had nothing better to do while I was in outpatient rehab. And during that 1999 period, I kept going to some very strange movies that changed my life. Like I saw The Matrix and Fight Club. Years later, both movies became really a foundation for my Gnostic views. And yes, I do think Fight Club is very Gnostic, and I'll get to that in a minute. Again, it's a weekend. I haven't bothered shaving because I need a break. It's the weekend, and I've been with the kids all weekend. But I am wearing my Abraxas shirt. Does this Abraxas gem make me look immortal? I don't know, but hopefully it'll be good luck. And yeah, that camera is definitely reacting. Anyway, the sequel to Fight Club, which comes in a graphic novel form, is very good. It's definitely, I don't know how, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but obviously the novel Fight Club has a very different ending than the movie Fight Club. I like the movie version much better. You have that incredible scene when you have the Pixies' "Where Is My Mind," that haunting tune playing, and you have the narrator, and you've got Marla holding hands. It's a very alchemical ending. They're holding hands as a union of opposites, and then you have the buildings falling apart. In other words, it's almost like the veils are tearing down and the material world is collapsing as both characters have gone on through this epic of individuation and are joining together. Now, the novel obviously is a little bit different. I might as well give some spoilers. The narrator instead ends up in some clinic, some psych ward, because he has gone crazy. I think in both, yes, Tyler Durden is sort of he is killed and but becomes integrated with the character. But in the novel, basically, the narrator finds himself in a clinic, a psych ward, and people around him are, of course, from Project Mayhem. So it's kind of an open-ended ending. And but in the movie, again, it's very alchemical, very apocalyptic, and so forth. Now, the yes, I am clearing my throat. I think Vance always tells me I do that too much during interviews, but it must be some nervous action. Again, as I lose my virginity here, vlogging for what it's worth. So in the graphic novel, you've got it continues basically. The narrator gets out of the psych ward. He ends up marrying Marla, has a kid, and then lo and behold, Tyler Durden comes back. And it gets, in the graphic novel, it really gets very, I don't know how to say it, very James Bond, because suddenly Tyler Durden is creating this global, he expands Project Mayhem into this global organization that's really always been around to basically bring about some sort of apocalypse and so forth. And it's interesting because you really couldn't take it any other way without making it sort of cheap and, again, very James Bondish. So what Chuck Palahniuk does is he basically destroys the fourth wall. And towards the end of the graphic novel, everything collapses, and suddenly you have he appears and meets the characters, other writers meet the characters, writers from different timelines or characters from different timelines join together and become sort of starts discussing the actual plot of Fight Club. It's very deconstructionistic, or I don't know how you want to call it, but it's interesting. It seems like it really was the only way to take this there. So, and in fact, it's not like the small fourth wall collapse that you might have in Deadpool 2 or something like that. This is total. Reminds me very much of Mel Brooks's Blazing Saddles, where towards the end of the movie, again, the fourth wall collapses. The characters of the Western setting spill over into Hollywood, into other movies, and it's a big uproar. And then somehow the movie suddenly flows back into a small screen where the characters are actually watching the ending, the true ending of Blazing Saddles. And it's also very interesting because I'm amazed that a movie like Blazing Saddles probably could never be made today. In fact, I don't think Fight Club could be made today. The movie Fight Club has many themes. And one of them is, of course, male initiation. And of course, a lot of people today have accused the movie and the author, Chuck Palahniuk, from you might say, supporting the whole idea of a male the toxic male idea, which I don't really know what that is. But it's almost sad that movies like Fight Club or Blazing Saddles and so forth that really take you to the edge and challenge you, and in many ways are very offensive because that's what they aim to do. Take you to the edge and challenge you. Probably couldn't be made today, but I'm glad Fight Club was made. So so I really enjoyed the graphic novel, the sequel Fight Club 2. But it did sort of change my ideas of Fight Club and even some ideas of Gnosticism. How is that? Well, in years ago, about 3 years ago, I did write an article called Gnostic Themes in Fight Club. I wouldn't say Fight Club is Gnostic. Again, it has many other male elements. Like I said, it is about male initiation, and it definitely, even the author, Palahniuk, says that he's sort of borrowing from Joseph Campbell, that men need to be initiated today, and that's one of the issues why our society is turning out as it is. I'm sure women need to be initiated, but that's really not something I know much about, so I want to stick to male initiation. I think Chuck is 100% right. That's part of why Fight Club has value even today to many men or individuals, but it has many themes. Consumer society, it has Zen Buddhist themes, and a whole Christian themes, and definitely I argue in my article Gnostic themes. There are Gnostic elements. What are those Gnostic elements? Well, the article you can find at thegodaboveGod.com, and the article basically, how do I argue it? I say that As the movie or the novel start out, you've got the main character, the narrator, and he is stuck in your typical Gnostic hell. He is in the material world. No, he's not just in the material world. He's completely dominated by the material world. He is embedded in a consumer society. He cannot control his spending. He somehow feels that buying IKEA and going to Starbucks and all that makes him more whole, but what it's doing is fragmenting and destroying him. In fact, the narrator finds himself stricken with insomnia, and he even says, when you've got insomnia, everything is a copy of a copy of a copy. That right there is very Gnostic, the Gnostic saw the material world as a copy of higher realms. And the state of mind he is very much as the Gnostics describe it. He's, even though he has insomnia, he's sort of in a sleeping, walking sleep mood. He's sort of drunken and in a stupor. And he's basically dying slowly. As I say, he is in the Hylic world. What happens? Well, let me back up. When the Gnostics, the Valentinians, and of course the Sethians too, they divided the universe or mankind into three levels. There was the Hylic level, which was the complete material dead level, where the narrator finds himself. Then there's a psychic level, and that's the place of the mind and the place of reason, but it's also the place where the spirit and the material meet. Not so much a battleground, but it can be. But this is a place where there is hope and there can be evolution. And of course, above that, you'd have what the Gnostics would call the pneumatic level, the spiritual level, the place of the higher realms. So what happens in Fight Club is that the narrator suddenly decides he is going to get help, and he rises to the psychic level. And how he does it? Well, as you would think, to get psychic help, you get therapy. But what he does is he starts going to all these support groups. He goes to cancer support groups, other disease support groups, and he finds himself sharing his story, even though it's sort of a lie, but even listening to others share their pain and their grief and how they've overcome. And how others really care about each other and how everybody's there for some sort of healing. Again, it's a mental thing, an emotional thing, but that really helps the narrator, and he finds himself no longer with insomnia, and he finds himself no longer in pain, and he finds himself with some freedom. He is in the psychic world. He is in the world of psychology and therapy, and where the mind and the emotions can actually work together. But that's not going to last, because very much in the Gnostic tales, being in this middle world, the world of the psyche, is still not enough, but you have broken through. So what happens is very much in line with the Gnostic tales or the Gnostic saga. There comes a time when the Gnostic revealer will come to the psychics, those who have a chance to evolve. And that's exactly what happens to the narrator. Comes in two forms, and again, that does happen in Gnostic stories. One is the divine feminine, and she appears as Marla, and of course, she's an obvious cipher for Mary Magdalene. She comes into these groups that she's joining, and her presence really disturbs the narrator. As the Gospel of Thomas says, first you will be disturbed, and then you will be amazed. But he's disturbed by her presence and her attitude and her whole almost cynicism in these groups, how she just smokes and will even be in groups that are only for men. And that really bothers the narrator, and he finds himself losing sleep too. So that's one Gnostic revealer that comes to the narrator to challenge him to go even higher. Then, of course, comes the famous Tyler Durden. And Tyler Durden, you might say, he is the narrator's daemon or higher self. He is the call from above that really also challenges the narrator to completely get out of his shelf and move to a higher stage. And that's what happens. Between Marla and Tyler Durden, the narrator finds himself completely abandoning the Hylic worlds and even the psychic worlds. He becomes into a stage. He goes into the spiritual world of pure instinct and also pure knowledge, pure gnosis, pure impulse, if you would. And it's pretty gritty because, like Neo in the Matrix, when you wake up to the real world, things don't really look very good. It's another similarity, but really, as you wake up to the spiritual world, that's when the real fight happens. So anyway, I won't go too much more into the plot of the first Fight Club, but I just wanted to give you some of the really obvious Gnostic elements in it. And of course, I mentioned the ending, which is very alchemical, where you have the union of the male and the female. Before that, Tyler Durden dies or becomes integrated with the narrator, which is very much in a sort of Christ-like Gnostic alchemical sense. So the narrator really becomes individuated. He becomes the logos, joins in with Marla, and the world collapses completely around them to the tunes of the Pixies, Where Is My Mind? So that's basically Fight Club for you. So what happens that has changed so much in Fight Club 2? Again, I always said that Tyler Durden was the perfect daemon, higher self, or Jesus aspect, if you would. And the reading Fight Club 2, I find myself being completely wrong about the whole thing. That is not who Tyler Durden is. And it made me even wonder, could there even be such a thing as a higher self, or is the game more complicated than that? Why do I say that? Well, as I mentioned in Fight Club 2, Tyler Durden returns and creates, he expands Project Mayhem into some really global James Bond-ish organization that's basically going to bring the whole Earth down. He's going to bring about some sort of apocalypse. And through it all, the narrator and Tyler Durden become, ultimate enemies. I mean, there is no reconciliation in Fight Club 2, the graphic novel. It is a fight between two entities before that fourth wall breaks down, and then it becomes a fight with the author of Fight Club and these own characters that suddenly are rebelling even against him. So who is Tyler Durden? Well, this is where it gets pretty crazy. In one section, as the narrator is getting therapy, again, we have a therapist, the psychic world sort of tells him. I don't know if this character is a Jungian or a Freudian, but his therapist tells him who Tyler Durden is. And he says the narrator thinks Tyler's some sort of contagion, some sort of virus that takes over minds. The psychiatrist answers and says, he's an archetype. Tyler works like a superstition or a prejudice. He becomes part of the lens through which you see the world. And that blew me away because Tyler Durden is not a higher self. He is sort of an archetype or it's hard to explain, a force of the universe. Reminds me very much of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, the Endless. These entities, and you might call them archetypes, that have existed forever in time and materialize in different places, regardless of whether we're human or animal or alien. They're always there, and they're always controlling different in every timeline and every planet. So Tyler Durden would remind me of Neil Gaiman's The Endless Destruction. He is the archetype or representation of destruction in the world, the Kali, if you would. He is the fire of Heraclitus gone completely crazy, and his one, you might say, mission is complete destruction, or the tension or the breaking of different opposites to bring about new things, regardless of whether it's humans or anything else. That is what Tyler Durden is, and he's not a higher self. And it also reminded me of Cormac McCarthy's great Gnostic novel, Blood Meridian, also one of my favorite novels of all time. And in that novel, you have a figure called the Judge. And the Judge gives this speech about how he is like Tyler Durden. He is war. He is Ares. He is destruction. And he says that destruction and war have existed long before man did. It is the ultimate way for God to get to know himself and become manifest in the world. And in a way, I think there is some truth about it. I remember a recent interview with Robin Robertson, the great Jungian researcher, from his book Inner Voices. He talked about how ants, red ants and black ants, have been at war for millions of years. And when they fight very, I don't know how you say, organized. They are as organized as a Roman legion. They create different, they have tactics and they create groups and phalanxes and all that. It's not exactly, you think, two insects fighting each other, but they fight in a very organized, tactical way. It's a very brilliant way too. And they've been doing that for millions of years. And even further, in this story that they've trapped themselves in, just like we humans are trapped in our own little war stories for tens of thousands of years, in the stories, the red ants always win. They're just bigger and more powerful. So when they break into the queen's chamber, if the black ants give up the eggs, the red ants will actually spare them and then use them as slaves or even let them free. If the black ants don't give up the eggs, they will kill them. So again, with these ants, there is this very organized, warlike attitude. And what do I see in there? Well, I see destruction. I see Tyler Durden. I see the archetype of war and destruction in there. And I see this happening with humanity. It will happen long after humanity's gone. It will happen in other planets or timelines. And Tyler Durden or destruction will always be around. That's not exactly good news, is it? But it sort of jives with the truth of occultism. What did Carl Jung said? He said that archetypes are quasi-sentient. In other words, they do have some sort of agency and independency. And also, Carl Jung did say that that the collective unconscious has an agenda. I'm assuming the agenda would be the integration of itself or to become fully aware. And if we as people or aspects of the collective unconscious don't grow or don't play by its agenda, it will destroy us and it will just create another avatar. So that's, I think, the disturbing thing about the whole Tyler Durden thing, not being a daemon, but being, again, this quasi-archetype, or maybe what Gordon White, archetype 2.0, understanding that there are these entities bigger than the gods, bigger than time and space, who are working for reasons that are mysterious. I can't see what the benefit is for destruction or war, but as the judge in Cormac McCarthy, as Ares, as Tyler Durden, as destruction in Neil Gaiman's The Endless and his comic books about Morpheus, this seems to be a theme that is around, and this seems to be a theme that is true. So I guess it's something that I'll have to further ponder upon. What is going on? Are there aeons doing this? Should we trust the aeons? Or is there another aspect about the whole pleroma kenoma thing that we are missing about? But it's always insightful to get these revelations with something like, again, reading Fight Club 2, which I finally got around to, and seeing what it is, and also having to basically step back and having old ideas in my old article about Tyler Durden being the higher self, the daemon, being completely swept away, and now having to work with a new model. But that's fine. That's how we grow. That is how we learn in this place, and that is how we get new revelations and hopefully get new weapons in our fight of the demiurge. Although, of course, when you read Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, the demiurge is very much like the judge, except he's very intelligent and he's very cunning. And again, he's not going anywhere. The idea of destruction and chaos and is always going to happen. I mean, I think that I guess maybe these ideas wouldn't be so hard in Hinduism, where the idea of destruction always coming sooner or later is perfectly fine. That's the way the universe is. But in my Gnostic state, I must say that it's always a good idea to find some sort of rebellion. So like what did Clark Emery say? The awakening of an individual is a cosmic event. What do I say on Aeon Byte? The awakening of an individual is a cosmic rebellion. And sometimes you get old and you get tired and you want to rebel against all this destruction, against the Tyler Durdens you thought were really a higher part of yourself, but in the end, probably aren't. So that's all I have with my first vlog, or whatever you want to call it. Hopefully I can do more if you like this. And if you feel there are certain topics you want me to talk about, Gnosticism, revelations that I've had, what's going on, please let me know. Write it down on the section, in the sections area, and I will do more. Again, this time I wanted to find something that you couldn't find anywhere else, discuss ideas that you can't find in the podcasts or in my articles or even in the books, to see how it's going. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you want as I continue to spread that Gnostic gnosis in trashy form. And if you have any other revelations about the nature of the universe, please let me know. So I guess that's all I got. And thanks for being here on this first one. Wow, almost 26 minutes. My God, this is even longer than my usual drivel on the show. Anyway, thanks and have a good eternity.